Hi guys, and welcome back to Gardening with Creations by DX & Co. As you can see, I've got the archway up already, but I don't think I'm going to keep it there. But today I just thought we'd do a quick video on actually building a garden fence. So let's get started. So this may seem obvious to all of you, but the first thing that we're going to get started with is actually clearing all of the old fence out of our way. Just getting all that debris out of our working areas. So there's the old fence there. I've gone ahead and moved this half out of my way for now. And let me bring you in a little bit closer and show you what this post is here. So this is not what we're going to be doing, but here is an example of something you could do. So you see I've got a cylinder block. That's what I was actually using for my fence to stack vertically. However, if you did not want to dig a hole, you could take something like this and that fence post and then actually just level this out, pour your concrete into that hole there, and you could actually have a stone block without digging a hole, and this would be strong enough to support your structure because you'd be pouring that concrete in there level, and this is a heavy block. So you could literally break this off and just have the half if you wanted to. So that's an idea for those of you who aren't comfortable digging holes in your yard, or you have tree roots or something. Here's an idea that would help you out. Now that's not what we're going to be doing, but it is definitely something you could do if you wanted a semi-permanent option. What we're going to be doing here is actually starting with a hole. Okay, so I dug this hole. I've got a friend who actually has an auger. Now if you're not familiar with an auger, you'll see me use one in a minute. So with my hole, I want a 1 foot hole, all right, or 12 inches deep. Now these are 4x4 posts that I purchased 8 foot long. I cut in half for a 4 foot fence post. I'm going to put it in the ground 1 foot or 12 inches. I've dug my hole an additional 4 inches past, so 16 inches deep is how deep this hole is. Now I did it with an auger and manual fence post to get the rest of the debris out. Now the extra inches are for the pea gravel. You want to buy or purchase a bag of pea gravel, set it in there first. That's to help with the drainage so your fence post doesn't rot out at the tip. It's a very important step. So we're going to go ahead and get our pea gravel in there. You need a minimum of 2 inches, but and a maximum of roughly 6 inches. It doesn't matter where you fall in between there, as long as it is at least 2 inches for proper drainage. All right, so we're going to start here by pouring in just a little bit of pea gravel, about 2 inches, 2 to 3 inches here. That should do it. I like to just kind of pack it down a little bit, make sure it's spread evenly across the hole. And then we're going to take our 4 foot fence post that we've already cut to 4 foot length. And this one's quite warped, so that's a bummer, but that's where the leveler comes in handy. So hopefully we'll get that straightened out. Now, important tip to note here, you want to make sure that the front of your post is flush or square. I want to make sure that this particular board is as straight as possible, and that's where we're going to be drawing our string line off of for the rest of all of our fence. So I'm going to get this as close to the house as I can, even though I'm going to be putting a board overlapping that, so it'll be okay. But I'm going to get it as close to the house as I can in this case, so that I have enough room for that board. Remember, that board's only 5 1/4. I didn't need to drill my hole that close to the house, but I need to make sure that the rest of this is close to the house. So what I'm going to do next is put my actual fence level on there. All right, so this is called a post leveler. As you can see, it's got 3 different levels on it, and you just mount it right to your post. I like to actually tag it in right through this screw, or this hole with a screw, hold it in place, so that way I'm not trying to hold it. These things cost about $3, so it's well worth the investment. Go pick one up from your local hardware store, Harbor Freight if you need to. I definitely recommend picking one of these up. Just on there, so now that way I can measure this top bubble, and this side bubble is going to tell me if I am level this way as well as this way. So that way when I pour the concrete mix in there, I can make sure that this gets level. So actually, we're on to that step now. We've got our gravel in there. We've got our post ready to maneuver around. We need to get some water. You can do that by a bucket of water, or if you have a hose and you want to try to follow the instructions on the bag, I typically just spray some water in there and mix it up. So the concrete mix that I've chosen for this project is an 80-pound bag of concrete mix by Quikrete. This is the high strength concrete mix. Now, you can actually buy post setting concrete mix, which is what I used on my actual fence gate in the front there. What that stuff does is sets up in anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes depending on temperature. So that way you can just boom, 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 knock out the whole run. But I decided this is about $3 cheaper per bag. It's high strength. Yes, it's gonna take a lot longer cure time or dry time. So, and I know that, and I don't plan to get this all done in just today. So I'm okay that this is gonna take a while to set up while I drill the next post and then the next post and so on and so forth. So when you're doing the job by yourself, it's understandable that, you know, sometimes you can cut a little bit of cost by waiting on the stuff that takes a little longer to cure. But this will still do the job. Given that this is an 80-pound bag instead of a 50-pound bag, I can probably get away with even about half of this bag and half the bag on the next one, thereby saving myself a little bit as well. So let's go ahead and get this one cut open and cement poured in there. We need a poker stick, and I'll explain that in a minute here, and we need some water. All right, so I don't have the hose actually hooked up back here yet, so I've gone ahead and filled up the Home Depot bucket with some water. Believe it or not, it's 32 degrees out right now, so it is cold and not the ideal temperature for working on a fence in your garden or working with concrete in general. But to be quite honest with you, I just want to get this done. I love gardening and I want to get my fence up so I can focus on the garden as the weather warms up. So we are starting here. This is a very heavy bag. Gonna pour just a little bit in, get it all around. Now, I mentioned before, you need a poker stick for this. So what I am talking about here, this is just a simple garden stake that I'm using, okay? And what I'm doing is just kind of poking the cement into and tucking it around the post, if you will, just making sure it's kind of evenly spread. And at the same time, I'm making sure the post is level, so that, and I'm getting out any of the air gaps. Kind of think of it just like you would when you're starting your seeds for your garden. You're just trying to poke out and compact and get out all the actual air gaps itself. All right. Now, I've only started a little bit of concrete in the hole. I haven't done all my, filled it up all the way. And then I'm going to put in some water. Okay. This is where I typically would take the hose. Okay, so I put in just about a quarter of the water that I want, not all of it. And again, I'm checking for level. This is the most important part, making sure that you're level. And I'm poking out all the air hose with my stick. This is just a simple garden stake that I'm using. You could use a stick, you could use a rod, anything to just kind of make sure there's no air holes in it. Okay, so I'm looking good there. Looking level. Got my water in there. Maybe actually a little bit too much water, but it's starting to seep down. Now I'm going to go ahead and pour some more concrete mix in there. Keep in mind that your finished look, you want to have dirt or grass usually around your posts. You don't want to see concrete, so you do want to leave a small gap at the top, unless you're going for that concrete look like on a driveway or something. You don't want to fill this all the way up to the top with concrete. You want to have room to put your decorative soil back or your grass, or, you know, for me is rocks in this garden, right? But I'm going to actually put a finished look in front when all is said and done. So again, I'm just repeating the process, just poking down, making sure I stay level here as I'm doing so, front and sides. And I need to add some water now that I've added some concrete. There are generally instructions on the bag as far as how much water to add if you're doing a full bag. So we used about a quarter of that bag on concrete, believe it or not, guys. This hole was about 10 inches in diameter at best, and not that deep. Remember, we're only using 14 inches deep, and we filled 14 or 16 inches deep, and we filled part of that with pea gravel. You can see there that we are perfectly level there. You can see that we are perfectly in that bubble there. Now right now we've got a bit of a soupy mix going on here, and that it's all water. But you notice there's room at the top for me to backfill with dirt as soon as it dries and sets up. That water is going to actually seep into that concrete, but I mixed it all up, as you know, with the poker stick. Just kind of mix it in there, popping out all the air bubbles so that it sets up and cures nicely. So we've got our first post set, guys. It's that simple. Now, what I want to do here is I'm going to actually leave it for the night to cure up, and then before setting my next post, because this first post is super important. Now, if I was using that post setting mix, again, I'll try to throw a picture of it up on the screen, then I could move on to the next stage and do a string line all the way down to where my posts are going to end. And the reason for that is so that I can make sure that next post stays flush and it's right perfectly in line. And I don't want to do that step and tie it to that and take a chance of getting this one unlevel in the meantime. So what we're going to do is let it cure up, rest up, and then in the morning or tomorrow we'll get back to this. It is officially the next day, a little bit warmer out here. In fact, it's almost 50 compared to yesterday's really cold with the wind chill. Now this morning, however, it was 27 degrees, so this concrete was still not solidified even as of this morning. It wasn't the perfect temperature for working with concrete, of course, but we do have a good solid foundation now. It is not moving at all as I jiggle it here, so we're going to run a string around it so we can draw our string line next. So let me show you guys how we're going to do that. So I've just got some string here. This is just the string that I actually use in my garden, so it kind of helps out. So I'm just going to tie one end around here. Typically you would either tie it around the post like this, so that way you're getting it. You want to make sure that you're getting the front half of the post, because that is where you're drawing. Or you could put a stake in on the ground right next to the post in front of it. So the whole point is to now pull this string line all the way out, pull it taut so that you have a straight line. At the end where your last pull is going to go, you're going to stick a stake in the ground, or a garden stake, or some kind of pole, or a lot of times I'll use a stick just to make a straight line. Now, right now I'm actually just using a garden spade because I can stick it in the ground and it'll stay put. Now, what I need to do is look down my string, make sure I've got a straight line here, and then I'll be able to position this. Now, if I go like this, I'm going to be heading out and my garden fence is going to go out. If I bring it in too far, it's going to be loose. So I'm going to find kind of my center, make sure I have it staked down. So now I've got a taut line, and what I want with this is each of my posts to touch the front of this, so that way my post is flush and I know my fence is going to be flush. So what we need to do now is take a look down that string line. Bring you guys with me here, and you can see the string there, and we just want to look straight down that string line and make sure it looks straight. Now that we've got a straight string line, we need to measure our 8 foot for our first post. Now the reason that I'm going with 8 foot is traditionally all of your wood planks, if you're not actually building it individually, like one plank at a time like we're going to be doing, your sections that you would purchase are actually in 8-foot sections traditionally. So we're going to lay our post out in 8-foot sections because I know that that equals 17 pickets. So that's helpful for me. So we're going to be laying ours out in 8-foot as well. Plus it's just 4 even posts for me to do 24 and 24 on the other side of my archway. So do your math. You can customize this however you would like. It also is cheaper to buy 8-foot 2x4s for your stringers, and we'll get into that when we get to that stage. So I'm going to go grab the auger so we can measure out where our next post is going to go and drill our hole. All right, so now that we've got our first post set, we got our string line drawn, we need to measure out our 8 feet. Now there are 2 ways to run your stringer, either on the inside of your 2 posts, and that would be putting an 8-foot board in between, which is perfectly fine. I recommend using a joist holder, which I'll put a picture up here on the screen so you know what I'm referring to. Or you can run your stringers to 8 foot on center. So that means from the center of your post to the center of your post is 8 feet. And that way your board will go right on your stringers, and I'll explain that as well. Now what I like to do, a lot of people will just mark a center of their board with a piece of tape on the string. I just take a simple garden stake like this, measure out my 8 feet, put it there so I know where this is going to be the center of my next post. I've already got my post here, I got to move it out of the way, but I've got it here. Just I was doing some rough measurements last night, and so this will now be the center of my post, flat against the string that we just did. So this is where I know my next post needs to go for the center. So it helps me when putting the level on here and when putting it in the hole for my center, so that I know when I run my stringers across these 2 posts, I've got my center line. And we'll move on to the next one and do the same after we put this one in the ground. This next part's going to be a little loud, so I'll cue the music. Now that we've got our hole dug with the auger, it's helpful to have some manual post hole diggers to help clear out the loose dirt that you just kind of stirred up. Just get yourself to the right kind of mix and depth there. First thing I want to do is measure my hole to make sure I'm at least my 1 foot, and I'm not, so I need to go down a little bit further. And there we go, we're roughly about 15 inches, so that gives us plenty of room to do about 3 inches of gravel and then our post and our concrete. So I'm going to go ahead and get this one set just like I showed you setting that one, making sure that we're center with our stake and our level, and then we'll move on to the next one. All right, so now that we've got our first 4 posts set, let me bring you in and show you a couple of things here. So on the first one we set there, you can see that the string line is nice and tight up against that post. It's not so tight that it's pushing out on the string and making it bow, but it is right up against it, causing it to be flush. Now the reason that we want it to be flush is that we want it to be square with this line. Now it doesn't have to be touching this string. In fact, you could have it just like that, a little loose. You see how loose the string still is. Like I said, I'm not actually pushing against the string. What I am doing is using it to make sure that my post is actually square, so when I go to put my board on there, this is square, that one is with that one, and so on and so forth. So if we take a look down our line here, you can see we've got our 4 posts set. Now my line is going all the way down to that corner where the fence is going to turn and go that way. We're going to end up putting our stringers on. We want this concrete to set up a little bit. You can see here that this concrete post is still wet. I stopped and actually made dinner in between. I did these 2 posts and then I just set that one now after dinner. For this part, we're going to be attaching our stringers. Now, a stringer is just all that is the board that goes in between these 2 posts for your actual fence panels to attach to. Now, this would be perfect if you have 2 people to help you hold this, but I recommend you have a level and clamps if you don't have 2 people. And these clamps will hold the boards up for us and act as that second person. But the level definitely, even if you have a second person to help you hold the board, comes in handy. You could get away with, this is an 8-foot 1x4, okay? So you can use this as a stringer, given that this is just a garden fence. The difference between this is as you can see, probably it's very wobbly. I actually did put it on my main fence over there in my front yard, and I can see the bowing in it. However, it holds. It held up to the windstorms the other day, so on and so forth. So you can definitely go a little less expensive, especially with lumber costs, and do that. I had pressure treated 2x4s that were actually my garden fence prior to this. So I'm actually going to reuse those as my stringers. Okay, so I just remeasured. This one is one of my 8-footers. I've got a couple of varying sizes, so I don't need to cut this one. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to need one for the top, and then I'm going to need one for the lower. Now you may have noticed that I'm butting up against the house with this one, and I had mentioned before that you want these either 8-foot on center or you want them in between. And if you're doing the in between, remember you're going to want some joist brackets for that, or you're going to have to toenail them in. But I'm butting up against the house because I specifically measured 24 feet off the house. So that way my first picket will go against the house and I have something to nail to. So I did that on purpose. This post, I'm dead center on that post, but butted up against the house. So I did that on purpose, which is working out just great. You're going to have this on here like this. Again, this is where 2 people come in handy, but if you don't have 2 people, just go ahead and eyeball if it's level or not. Just get it clamped in place just on one end, so not too tight, so that way you can just turn around and pick up the other end, scooch it over into place. Now, you may be asking, does it matter how high or low this first one is? Your stringers don't have to be a certain height unless you're trying to match it with your gate rails. That's the only time I'd be concerned about the actual height. Otherwise, just get one on the top, relatively close to the top, and relatively close to the bottom. Now on a taller fence, like a 6-foot fence, you can get away with doing 2, but most people would do 3 stringers. So that way you have 3 sections to nail to. I personally only did 2 on my front gate, and it's perfectly fine, as I mentioned. So now that I've got my board up there, I'm just going to check for level. And by that, I can see that this end needs to go up. Now, is it required for this to be level? No, It's really not. It just depends on how much of a perfectionist you are. It's really so that way when you're screwing it in or nailing it in, that you have a straight line across. But truthfully, this is just the backer board. It's just being nailed into. So at the end of the day, it does not matter if this is level or not. So just do your best to level it, but really it's not going to make or break it. I'm a bit of a perfectionist on certain things, so I like to make sure that it's level. These clamps here, I think are like $3 a piece at Harbor Freight. Now, because these posts aren't exactly hard set yet, I'm just going to check for plumb again on my posts, make sure that I didn't pull them out of whack. The important part, you want some deck screws, outdoor weather, all weather deck screws to put these in. You do not want to put these in with just any old screws, okay, because they'll rust and rot out. So you do want to use the appropriate size deck screws. Just using some 3-inch deck screws here, star head. I think this is a T20. Now, the reason I'm using these ones, 3-inch ones, A, they're what I had on hand from a different project, but B, because I'm going through a 2x4 into a 4x4 post. So I want to get as much meat on there as I can, and I'm going to put 2 in per side. One thing to note about screws, whether they be deck screws or otherwise, certain screws react with certain woods. So this is a pine board that I'm screwing into, so keep that in mind when you're screwing it in. You want to know what kind of screws you're using, what kind of coating. Now let me get the bottom one on. So now you see how you put your stringers on. Okay, so I'm going to pretend like we got all our stringers across all 4 of our posts here, and then we'd start putting on our panels. Now, as I mentioned before, we bought pickets that are 6 foot because it actually ended up being cheaper for me than buying pickets that were 4 foot. So these ones were just over $2 a piece, which is fantastic. This is a pressure treated lumber. It's like a soft pine. Went with the dog-eared style, and what we are going to do is put them here, but I don't want a 6-foot fence, obviously, so I'm going to cut these each down to the 4-foot length. If you're buying a full panel, it will come with the stringers on top, so you don't have to do that. You just set the posts and then you screw the full panel right onto the fence. But we're doing it as individual pickets because, as you can see, my ground is very uneven. What this allows me to do is cut each picket individually as I go along to make one level fence on the top. I'm not so worried about the bottom as much because I am going to put a flower bed in front of this, so it'll cover that up. And then I think I'm going to do a raised bed on the back of this and have more plants, right? Why not? So let's go ahead and get started with our first picket. Now our first picket's going to go right up against the house, as I said. Alright, so unfortunately my microphone did cut out here and I didn't realize it. So here I am just getting ready to cut the first board down to our 4-foot length. And I'm going over explaining that you want to make sure you remember to measure from the top of the board because you are cutting off the bottom of the board. And I also am marking that board and then showing you the speed square. I recommend, if you don't have one of those, they're a very handy tool, very inexpensive. Pick one up. Maybe in the future we'll do a video on all the different features that a speed square has to offer. It's a pretty awesome little tool. So we're going to get this board cut here, and then in the next scene I'm going to show you how we attach it to our stringers. We're putting up our first board here using brad nails. I find them to be strong enough. Put in one nail at the top and then grab your level so that you can actually make sure that this one is level. It is one of the most important parts to make sure that this first piece is level before you move on to the next part. You can certainly use screws, deck screws, 1¼ to put these up. I've found that the brad nails are very strong. Now to start putting on your next piece, you want to make sure you're throwing the level across the top, leveling the top pieces. I'm using a clamp here to help me hold it, but leveling the top is more important than the bottom. So always put the level across the top. All right, and here we go, just doing the rest of the fence. Repeat, making sure you're keeping that top level until you've got the... If you stay tuned here at the end, I'm going to show you how we built our gate in case you're interested in also knowing how to build a gate here. All right, so showed you guys now how to build the fence, set the posts, get your pickets installed, and as you can see, everything's looking pretty good. Now, I personally have to go buy some more supplies before we can keep going, but you guys know how to do it from here. Just finish out your fence, make sure you're setting your posts before you do so, putting your stringers on, and then setting your pickets. Now you may be saying, Adam, but you didn't show us how to build a gate. Well, let me show you that next if you're interested. So as I said, I'm using the archway for my garden gate, but this is the side entrance to my garden, and so this will apply. I can't show you the actual build, but what I can show you is how it's done. So first you're going to start by getting your post set. You've got your post on the left there and your post on the right. Now measure your opening. Now I happen to have done a 5-foot opening here so I could get the lawnmower in and out with the trailer and work in the garden. So once you've got your opening measured, like I said, this is a 5-foot opening. The most important part now, you subtract 3/4 of an inch. That's right, 3/4 of an inch. So that leaves me with a board for my frame of 4 1/4. Now let me take you in and show you exactly what I mean. You're going to start with your top rail at 4 1/4. Your bottom rail 4 1/4. Then your two side pieces, you need to measure your distance top to bottom and subtract the 2x4. So most people would go here to these runners, okay, and top and bottom, measure the distance in between the two of them, and that's what they would cut this 2x4 to. Just so it looks aesthetically pleasing. Is that absolutely necessary? No, it's not. But that's just to kind of look aesthetically pleasing when you're looking straight across at your runners. There it goes straight across and continues on the other side. Now, so again, subtract 3/4 of an inch from left to right after measuring your opening, and then measure in between your runners and cut your two boards. So you've got 4 boards now, your 2 top rails, your 2 side rails. And then you go out and you buy one of these kits. It's called a no sag gate kit, okay? They're about $35-ish at most of your big box stores. I actually happen to get mine from a company called Menards. The Home Depot and Lowe's also have them. Now it comes with this hinge already mounted, so you have 2 brackets that have a hinge on them, and then 2 brackets that do not. Now these are made for gates anywhere between 24 and 72 inches. So that allows you to actually go all the way up and not get sag in it for up to 72 inches. Now if you're going to go with that large of an opening, I would upgrade your post from a 4x4 to like a 4x6 or a 6x6 post. This is a 5-foot opening, and you know, the weight of the pickets is pretty heavy. So first you do the 2x4, you put this one in between this metal bracket and the hinge, right? And then you do the top rail, screw it in first, then you screw in the side rail. Same with the bottom, and there you go. Once you get all 4 pieces together, go ahead and mount that onto your post, and then close your gate. Have somebody hold it closed if you need to, and you'll just have this big picture window opening. And just make sure your gate's swinging properly the way you want it to. I like to throw a level across the top, make sure everything's level at the time. And then you start mounting your pickets on, just like I showed you for building the fence. Nothing else is different. Level your top, each picket, and nail them onto your board. And that's it, guys. So then you have yourself a gate. Now on the outside, you need to purchase additionally, you need to purchase a latch and a handle if you want it. So just a latch, a handle. What I did was attach a string to it, put it up through a little hole in the top there, and that way I can open the gate from the outside and close it, no problem. And then if I want to open it, I just pull on this string right here, very simply, and it pops the gate open. So, pretty great. So that is how you build a gardening gate. As you can imagine, there are many different types of garden fences that you can go with. I've shown you here how you can customize your fence to the way you want it. But keep in mind, there are many different types of fences. There's the split rail fence like we were trying to go with. You could also do the same design that we're going with here, but you could do a shadow box effect, similar to what we did using our pallets. You could also utilize pallets to do this and save on cost, right? The pallet fence that we had up until we just recently redid it with this fence lasted for many years, and definitely was a really cool fence. It could have even been painted and lasted longer. You can utilize chicken wire on your fence. You can utilize cattle panel. That's the look I was going to put across here, but we're toying with the idea of maybe painting a mural on the fence, so we wanted to go this direction instead. The cattle panel would have given me some more visibility into the garden, and I kind of might have liked that as well. So either way you decide to go, you can still apply a lot of these principles that I showed you today, whether it be building the gate for the garden, setting your posts, running your stringers, whatever it takes. Make sure that you apply these principles to whichever style fence you decide to build. Again, my name's Adam, guys. I hope you guys are staying safe and enjoying your gardens. Thanks for watching.